Good evening, everyone. We're about to start the study session tonight. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. First item on the agenda is Dr. Langford, presentation from Apple. Dr. Langford.
All right, as we know, budget season is here, and we'll have budget presentation next week and then the vote the following week. So we wanted to share some information about an Apple investment that we're looking at as a district, to give you all information and time to ask questions and to think before we vote in a couple weeks. I wanted to give you a little background information, and then I'm going to have Jean Hessen. Jean is elementary supervisor, but also supervisor of instructional technology, and she and Chris Brown, our assistant director for instructional technology, have been working together for over most of the last year on this project, and I'm really very proud of the work that they have done. You know, when we first experienced, it seems like it was forever ago, but it was only 3 years ago, when we first encountered COVID, that first 9 weeks when everybody in the country was shut down. We discovered very quickly that one of the problems that we had is that we were a district that was predominantly, we had started the shift to mobility, but we were predominantly a hardwired computer district. Almost everything plugged into a wall. And the problem that we faced immediately is that you could not get devices. The lead time on most mobile devices, laptops and things like that, was off the charts. The one thing you could get were Chromebooks. And we bought thousands of Chromebooks, and they've served us well. But the life expectancy of a Chromebook is about 3 years. Sometimes they last longer, you can use them for certain functions, but they drop off for being a secure testing platform and different things like that after about 3 years. We've kind of limped across the finish line this year with our Chromebooks. They've served us well, but there's, I was talking to a group earlier today, and I said, it's like, if you want an analogy, sort of like Thelma and Louise. We're not quite to the edge of the cliff yet, but we're getting close, and everybody in the country is dealing with the same thing. As we got ESSER money in response to COVID, one of the challenges that Dr. Phillips gave us very early on was, a lot of districts have spent tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on sugary things, things that are glitzy and things like that, but things that are very short-lived. And we've tried to invest strategically on things that serve our students, serve our teachers, but also go beyond a quick fix. We've tried to find things that give us a more bang for our buck over a longer term. We've invested a lot, like in our anatomage tables and different things like that, updating our CTE programs. We've talked about a lot of those things. For technology, in January, y'all approved, and Chris, jump in if I misspeak here. In January, y'all approved a significant expenditure out of ESSER to upgrade our tech infrastructure. The fewest number of devices we'll ever use in Sumner County is right now. The fewest number of online tests that we'll ever give is right now. So the challenge is how do we address our Chromebook cliff while utilizing a significant amount of ESSER money that we have remaining to address the needs of our students moving forward. Not just to provide a testing device, not just to provide a word processor, but how do we use it and meet that challenge? And I'm excited to turn it over to Jean now and let her share what she and Chris have been working on.
Thank you. So I'm not going to lie, it is exciting to stand here and talk to you about instructional technology, taking the third grade retention hat off and sharing some exciting news with you all on projects that we've been working to refine, to launch, and to just think through for the last probably 2 years. So really excited about this project and the impact that it's going to have on our students. Just like Mr. Langford, Dr. Langford said, shout out first to the technology department. This is Brittany Rowlett, who works with Apple. She's been fantastic in all of her support and the support her teams have provided. But she would tell you, working with our district and two departments that get along well with instruction and technology centered on what's best for kids and teachers is an absolute game changer. So thank you for your patience and for your flexibility and for running with some pretty crazy ideas that are cool for kids. So we're excited about this project to show where we've been and where we're going, and excited to head for the next, let's say 5 years, right? So we're pumped about this. First, where have we been? This picture was taken about 1.5 years ago. Most of these pictures are K-2 teachers, kindergarten, first and second grade teachers, along with principals, assistant principals, and lead educators. Over the last over the last 1.5 years, we have deployed about 3,000 iPads into schools. Every principal, assistant principal, and lead educator has an iPad. Every K-2 classroom has 5. And most recently, right before testing, before EOCs, we deployed 631 iPad carts of 25 to every middle school and high school. So we've slow walked this launch so that we could troubleshoot and get ahead of things that we knew were going to be barriers for us. So we're excited to launch this next and final phase of our Apple project. Now, of course, we can talk all day about online testing. We know that ACT in October is going to be online. EOCs going forward are online. And this year, the 6th through 8th grade students tested TCAP online. It's here. It turns around, the scores more quickly. The online testing is here to stay. And these devices will absolutely run the ACT, the EOCs, and all state testing through TestNav, through a secure platform. But these devices are a lot more and provide way more opportunities and experiences for our students than online testing. And we're excited to jump into that. We're excited to truly work as teams and shifting the mindset to work to unlock the genius of our students and our teachers. What exactly does that mean, to unlock the genius of a student? Identifying their passions, identifying their talents, and providing them with real-world experiences that are beyond the walls of their classroom. And this tool with Apple and with teacher guidance can do a lot of that for us. And we're just really excited to get started in this next phase for our students. Where are we now? Looking at what do iPads provide for our students. Like I said, it brings the outside world into the classroom walls. I'll show you, we're going to have a little bit of a demo at the end. You'll be able to see how the Statue of Liberty looks a lot different in room 27 at Union than it does on Ellis Island, but how that experience can be provided to all of our students. And we're excited to show you that. But bringing those experiences into to our classrooms. Providing access for all students. Heard a story a couple weeks ago about a team at a middle school that was really excited about a project they were working on together. And they couldn't wait to run with the next idea and the next idea. And of that group, 2 had access at home and 2 did not. And so all thinking and brainstorming took place within those walls. Those kids were ready to run. We're excited to provide access for all students and those opportunities for all students going forward, to eliminate that barrier of, hey, I can't work on this tonight. I don't have a device at home. We're excited to open that up for all of our students. We're also excited to remove barriers. So students are complex. There are individuals that have hearing impairments, visual impairments. Text needs to be larger, smaller, highlighted, read to them. They need to be able to speak for their text, for their device to write for them. Those accessibility options provided by Apple are game changers when it comes to opening possibilities or unlocking the genius of truly all students. All students have that level of passion and expertise, and the iPads will provide opportunity and accessibility that we haven't experienced on Chromebooks, and we're excited about that. Met this afternoon for an hour and a half with our EL department and our SPED department, and looking at what are those accessibility options that some students need that would benefit all students, or that would benefit a certain one or two students, and what does that look like from student to student. So to be able to remove those barriers for our students and provide accessibility to those devices is really exciting for us. And something we learned about this afternoon, Adobe, we are looking at Adobe licenses for, CTE classes, and now all students who take those CTE classes of marketing or printing or digital design will now have the Adobe licenses actually on their iPads as well. So expanding that even just for those CTE courses. So we're really excited for our students to look beyond assessments. These devices will be far more than assessments. It will actually be an opportunity for them to create, for them to work together, for them to team and communicate as a group in working in projects. We're excited for that opportunity for our students. Okay, here's a good one for our teachers. So far, in just the devices that have been deployed, proximity has been huge. Teachers are no longer tied to the front of the classroom. They're able to move around the classroom while projecting what's on their screen, being close to students, working on, that's obviously a great behavior management system or management tool, but also being able to walk around and show this kid is doing a great job here. I want to show what he's doing. This is where the misconception's happening. I want to do a class reset. The feedback is immediate. I'm projecting that great work on the board. We see this right now in schools. And we're so excited to provide with this project access to an iPad for all teachers. So that immediate feedback of this is exactly what happened in math. This is where the error is happening. I'm showing this student's doing it well. I can project it as a teacher and still be moving around the room. Opening up those possibilities of proximity is huge. Beyond that, creating lessons that tap into students' interests. We'll have a demo in a few minutes of what that looks like, but in 4th grade they learn about a figurative good heart versus a literal good heart. There's an opportunity to layer that in. Also, they learn about the Statue of Liberty and other national symbols in elementary school, and there's an opportunity to tie that in as well. So looking at engaging lessons that truly tap into their interests, teachers are able to do that quickly and much more effectively with the opportunities that iPads provide. Also, it complements our standards and instruction, just like I named. Virtual reality textbooks, and then Apple Classroom. I'm going to spend a minute here because when we talk to teachers about Apple Classroom, this is what typically happens. I just learned Google Classroom, and now we're going to do Apple Classroom. I'm like, oh, I know, I totally understand that. It's a completely different ballgame. Google Classroom is where we would make assignments for a student who's absent, where we would put the lessons from the notes from our lesson, right? That's going to be a learning management system, Google Classroom. Apple Classroom is completely different. On Apple Classroom, I can, as a teacher, with my device, look and see all of my students in Block 1 and what they're doing immediately on that device. And I can see this student is exactly where they're supposed to be, but this one isn't. And I can actually give them a timeout or lock that device and say, let's talk about this. This is where I asked you to be. It's a management tool for teachers to be sure that students are where they're supposed to be, that they're engaged, that they're on task, and that they're safely navigating whatever platform that they're using. That is an oversight piece that teachers audibly gasp when they learn about. Like, oh, I can see exactly what this student's doing, and I can share it. It's something that students and teachers really look forward to in using iPads. And then for our leaders, a funny story, when we first rolled out iPads to principals, I also got this. Listen, I like a legal pad. Can you just give me a legal pad? And I said, well, of course. And so I picked up the iPad. I turned the notes section to a legal pad color, and I was like, here you go. You have all the paper you need right here. We'll start with this practice. Let's just pick it up and use this as a legal pad. And he grumbled and laughed because he thought I was being, smart. And then within the next 2 or 3 meetings, I noticed that that's what he picked up and brought with him. He was starting to use it. And what a great model for teachers to see that my principal, who was a little reluctant, leaned into it and now is picking that device up to go from classroom to classroom, to take notes for observations, to take notes on to-do lists or what's next in my workflow. So some of the biggest wins that we've seen for principals is simplifying their workflow. Right? They don't have all these devices and papers and PDFs that they're having to sign. They can scan it, upload it, goes right where it needs to go. They are leaning into the learning. So they're being the model for their students and for their teachers to lean into what they don't know and embrace the technology. One of the biggest wins we've had for principals is truly in safety. So with iPads, there's an app they can download where no matter where they are in the building, or outside of the building, they're able to immediately access their school cameras. So if they're in the annex, they're in the freshman wing, they're in the gym, they can see what's happening in the cafeteria, they can see what's happening in the freshman wing, or they can see what's happening anywhere in their building, immediate access to those cameras anywhere in the building on those iPads. It's been one of the biggest wins for our leaders. Really excited about that. What questions do you have so far on where we are and what we're looking to do just with this?
Mr. Lancaster.
What percent of our students have, do we know what percent have internet at home? And like, I know that's one issue that I would think this would bring up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Lancaster, it's, I was like, Chris, I don't know, do you know the percentage of kids that don't have access to the internet?
During the pandemic, it was between 25-30%.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's from in between Portland and Cottontown over to, Bethpage and Westmoreland are actually very well connected. There's just a pocket right in the middle of the county, like White House, south of White House, Cottontown, in that area. What we did find, though, was that most of our kids have some internet connectivity through smartphones. Almost every family in Sumner County has a smartphone, and I think the thing, an appeal about an iPad is that, so many people are iPhone, that you can obviously connect any device to it on hotspot, but it does work more seamlessly with the iPad, and I think that gets at some of the problem.
Another one with these devices is so many of the apps are available offline. You can look at the Insight Heart app that we're going to look at in a few minutes, the Statue of Liberty app that we're going to look at in a few minutes. Those are available at full function without internet access to students at home. So if they were to look at the layers of a frog dissection, remove the skin, remove the muscle, skeletal structure, that can be done apart from having internet access. Those apps will still function fully. Okay.
Is your light on? Mm-hmm. I can't see it because you're dead. Ms. Andrews.
Thank you. So are we looking at going one-to-one with our students and assigning iPads to each student? Is that what we're...
So I'm going to dive okay. That is a fantastic question, and I'm chomping at the bit to get to it. And I think that we're going to circle back to that for sure.
And then also, because you did talk about Google Classroom, we will still use Google Classroom. It's going to be a both and.
Yes,
it'll just,
yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Just depend upon what the need is, will depend upon which service. So we're still keeping, we'll still have our Sumner K-12 accounts and all of the Google stuff. That it'll just.
Yeah, I think
it's not completely going from one platform to another. It's incorporating a new platform into what we're already currently doing.
Yeah, I think Google Classroom is a little bit like, it's more powerful than this, but it's a lot like a backpack. It holds all the student needs in terms of assignments and things like that, but it doesn't, in the way that we utilize Google Classroom, it doesn't have all the tools for the teacher to use in the classroom as powerfully as we see with Apple Classroom.
Right. I just feel like in the past that teachers are used to getting one and it's replacing another. So this is not replacing, this is complementing.
This is providing access in a different way to the platform we're already using. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the next video I want to show you, it gives the old narrative of schoolwork or projects when kids are kicking rocks, like, I don't want to do this. But when you see the kids' actions in this video, you realize the mindset shift that these kids are have had, how they look to team and how they look to collaborate. I think it's a great example of where we're heading as a district, and I think you guys will appreciate it.
Please, eyes up here. Eyes up here. We're not done. Group 3. Let's have Ivy and Michael, Ryan, Sally, and Thomas. Thomas, your homework is to explore gravity. Okay. Don't forget, projects are due on Friday. Friday, please. Friday, and don't forget your homework.
Homework. Oh, homework. I hate you. You stink. I wish I could wash you away in the sink.
Guys ready?
If only a hippo would smash you to bits. Homework. Oh, homework. You're giving me fits. I'd rather take baths with a man-eating shark, or wrestle a lion alone in the dark, eat spinach and liver, pet 10 porcupines, then tackle the homework my teacher assigns.
Action. Dad!
Homework. Oh, homework. You were last on my list. I simply can't see why you even exist. If you just disappeared, it would tickle me pink.
Next up, Group 3.
Homework. Oh, homework. I hate you. You stink.
That is my seventh grader in a nutshell, right? That would be something she would completely agree with. Thinking about, I don't want to do this, but those students were absolutely engaged, creating, representing their learning, doing their research, what's going to drop faster, that watermelon or that egg, taking those notes, working together as a team. And then who knows, those kids could be, engineers one day based on that trajectory of that ramp. So opening those experiences up for the kids, that's engaging, that taps into their interests, and that teachers are able to launch that aligned with standards. Not fluff, not something that's above and beyond, but truly something that speaks to kids. There will be zero learning curve with these devices for students. It will be, wait, don't do that yet, right? We're going to be keeping ahead as much as we can, keeping ahead of them. So super excited to see where we go with this and unlocking students' genius, tapping into their talents, and removing those barriers and access for students through the accessibility options provided for all students through these iPads. Okay? To truly work to unlock their genius. Things like CTE career coaches, CTE pathways, those are already working diligently to do that, to tap into their interests and their passions, and this will be another tool to layer into that work. So how will we make this happen? Simply purchasing the devices would not be enough. We've worked with great teams of leaders, of Apple representatives, of our own representatives of our own department to approach this in a threefold way. Both infrastructure, devices, and professional learning. Looking first at the improvements to infrastructure. Increased number of access points within buildings. Currently and during COVID, our approach to access points were checkered. This classroom, this classroom, this classroom, this classroom. Access points, for the most basic way that I understand it and what makes sense to me, it's like musical chairs. There are 10 spots at this access point. If you're 11, you're going to wait. You might encounter the spinning wheel of death as things load, right? We've been in school. We know what that is. As someone leaves, you have a place. And then that other 12 is waiting. We're moving towards, and the first allocation of money that you all approved is purchasing additional access points, additional wiring, so that we have an access point in every classroom. You can access the internet, and it will stream for you in this room. When you leave, it will drop and connect to the next access point. Okay, so that's happening now. Increased bandwidth to properly support the devices. So we are going from a district that's providing coverage to a district that's providing density. So that now not only can we connect, we can stream. You, me, and the neighbor next to me can all stream. Okay, we're moving that way. We have plans for that, and those are currently happening. Okay, so infrastructure, first and foremost, they got to connect.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Absolutely.
Is that moving outside of the building as well? Because I know, I feel like, teachers, one of the things they love to do, especially in middle school, especially on days like today that's pretty, is to get the kids outside because they need that. But I know from sitting like in car lines and stuff and waiting that connectivity is lacking sometimes within our buildings. So are we looking at not just putting access points within the buildings, but also to then make it go out, at least to a certain maybe degree within our
reach, right?
Yeah, within our parking or so within the campus.
So we do, we have some areas that we lit up during the pandemic that do have outdoor access. This plan that we're talking about is predominantly focusing on the interior of the buildings. That's not to say that that's not something that we could easily expand to. What we're actually doing is going to give us that ability to scale our network, to kind of future-proof it and add things like that very easily, and reconfigure on the fly.
Yep. There's a question for that. And then looking at devices. So here's your question, Ms. Andrews. What's our plan? What's our plan with this phase of the Apple project, or Apple Vision? An iPad for every K-12 certified teacher. Blast, While We Try, SPED, Related Arts, ELA, Math, all K-12 certified teachers. Okay? That's huge. That is a huge win. Beyond that, this project will provide one-to-one for all 6th through 12th grade students. The device, and we're gonna mess with it in just a few minutes, but the iPad that you have in front of your actual monitor is the exact iPad in case that students will be provided through this project. One-to-one for 6th through 12th grade students. This is not one-to-one like I'm walking into Miss Smith's classroom, I'm going to the cart and I'm grabbing iPad number 7. This is, I'm Jean Hessen and my iPad's in my backpack. And wherever I land in that building, that classroom is one-to-one. That is that student's device for that year, for the entire year, opening up possibilities in every single classroom. So CTE is one-to-one, ELA is one-to-one, and CDC is one-to-one with those accessibility in those apps. 5 iPads for each 3rd through 5th grade classroom. At the end of this project, every K through 5 classroom will have 5 iPads, and every K through 5 teacher will have one for instruction. Apple Care. This is one of the things that makes this project unique and different than anything we've experienced in our district. Apple Care is the magic when dealing with kids. So with this device, if I have a 9th grader who leaves it outside in the rain after a football game, that device is covered at 0 charge to the district twice per calendar year. Okay, so twice a year, if the student jams Cheetos in the home button at home, it's covered. If the charger breaks into the device, off into the device because they're in a hurry, it's covered. Every student twice per year will have a complete replacement of that device. That is a game changer. We have not had that in the district before. Now, we will write agreements and usage agreements where once is an oops and 2 is let's talk about it. We may have a penalty, right? Because there's a responsibility and some skin in the game for the end user and those parents. And we can talk about what that looks like. But that is replaced twice a year with Apple Care. Those Logitech cases with the keyboards and trackpads will be part of this purchase as well. So when navigating Test Nav to take your EOC or your end of the year test or your ACT, you have a full keyboard and a trackpad in that during that assessment.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. The 5 iPads for each 3rd through 5th grade classroom.
Yes, sir.
Is that in addition to the iPads the schools might have already had purchased by like PTO?
Yes, sir.
And that? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Does the Apple Care cover lost and stolen devices?
It's a great question. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. The customer side of Apple consumer side of Apple, not the education side of Apple. The consumer side of Apple, yes, it would, but for education, no. Lost and stolen is not covered. However, we have levels of protection with our mobile management device system that would protect us when a device is lost or stolen. So let's say that your son takes the device home and it's misplaced. You're like, oh my goodness, right? So let's, hypothetically speaking, right? I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but let's say the device is lost, right? So your son loses the device. You can contact the school and say, hey, kids lost the device. We know which device was issued to your son, and we can brick it so it's useless outside of your son. If this is stolen out of a backpack, we can also brick it, and if it's sold to the local pawn shop, we can brick it. If we don't know it's lost or stolen, it's still useless outside of our network. And it'll say, property of Sumner County Schools, please contact. Our plan is to let SROs and local pawn shops know that these devices are coming into our district, and if they're lost or stolen, or you get one at your shop, know that that's the school district's, and it's useless.
Personally, I think we should push out a Google form with it that says, if you'd like access to this iPad, please fill out this form.
Yeah, give me your name.
So I think we'd be shocked at how many people would fill that out.
Right? Right.
Jean will also, so these devices are being assigned to students. Many of our students have iCloud and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
We use Find My iPhone all the time at our house for multiple devices. Would they be able to use that with this device as well, since it technically, like, will it connect to that?
That's a great question. So, all students, all Sumner County employees will have a Apple ID issued to them. It will be an email address that they're already using. It will not be another one, like another, that's a lot. So you'll be able to log in with your sumnerschools.org account that will log you into your iCloud and will provide so many 200 somethings of storage, lots of storage for you, and it will remove the, well, I don't want to use my personal Apple ID because then my text messages come through. Or I'm an Android user, I don't want to use this iPad. Everyone in the district will have an Apple ID issued to them. That Apple ID will be managed, and because it's managed, if it's lost or stolen or needs tracked, we have that capability within our district. So if it's lost, you're like, this happened just maybe 2 weeks ago, a teacher called in panic thinking, I've lost this iPad, it's somewhere in this elementary school. And our mobile management, Mosul person in the technology department was able to locate that down to a classroom and say it's in this classroom. So we were able to do a Find My iPad approach with the entire district management service. That's something that the manager...
So it won't be able to connect to like what I have now with my family. Like it wouldn't show up on that for me to ding it.
It would not for the student. Now the teachers do have the option of logging in with their personal Apple ID for things like I'm a teacher who's used Apple forever. I have a handful of apps that I love. I want to go ahead and log into the iTunes store and pull those down. Yes, they can. And then but Find My iPhone is only for personal Apple IDs, not district managed ones.
Okay.
But the capability of finding it when it's lost is absolutely still there. Yes, ma'am. There's another. Yes.
I assume we're putting some good like security features from apps, and like you can't just social media and all that stuff.
Right. Yes, sir.
Be blocked, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this is truly a managed device. So things like messages, it's not an option. FaceTime is not an option. WhatsApp, Snap, Instagram, all the things are not available for download for students. There will be a curated list built by teachers and built by admin for students to pull from, like its own little mini store where students can download as a part of the managed system. Okay.
But YouTube, for example, would be. I mean, I know YouTube is so much educational, but it's
So there's junior YouTube that's available, but there's YouTube's available. I believe I haven't used it in a minute. I've been on the classroom, but it's available with filter.
And our filtering would still run.
Yes.
Even on their personal Wi-Fi.
YouTube is probably the most.
Yeah.
It's like,
right. Yes, sir.
It's very important for a lot of things, but
yes,
then
sir.
it's like
very.
Right. I would never remember the state song if it wasn't for YouTube. So I needed that availability, but I didn't need full availability. So I had access within a filter. Okay. And that same filter would apply at home. Okay. And then license, that's a great segue there. License for our mobile management system is included in this purchase as well.
One question, go back to devices. So
Yes, sir.
As a parent with kids with Apple devices, chargers,
Good one. Yep.
how are we, I mean, I know that's going to be like, everybody's going to lose a charger, going to break a charger, going to,
Sure.
and you got chargers at home or chargers at school, and how's that going to work?
Yes, sir. So if your home is like mine, they are very coveted items, right? I think we're down to 2 now. And then, right, and exactly. And then the chargers issued by Apple are very different than the chargers issued by Walmart, right? And we want the ones issued by Apple. I get it. The difference is, so with that device, those chargers are covered twice a year for lost or broken. That counts as one of your instances. So if your cat gets the charger and eats the wire, you can have that replaced for free, but it counts as one of your Apple Care instances for that device. Right, so we got to be a little careful, right? They're still going to be very highly sought after items, but
$600 iPad or $20 charger.
yes, sir. Right. We're going to figure that one out. Yeah. So they'll be on. So I believe the question was asked. That just sparked me. Are we going to take the Chromebooks that have already been purchased or Apple devices that have already been purchased? Are we going to take those back? Or are they going to no longer have those? No. So where I'm going with this is the Chromebooks that are currently in the buildings are staying in the buildings, and the district device funds allocated to schools will stay with schools. And on that district device fund list will be chargers. So a school could say, I no longer have the lift of providing devices for my students. I now can take some of this money and buy additional chargers for my students, or charging stations for my students.
And it'll be a good use for our existing Chromebooks and iPads that are in the building, and we'll have a little bit of a reserve for each school. So, we're always going to have some kids that forget each day, so that they're not deviceless in the building.
Absolutely.
In the classroom itself, and I don't know, I know we have the Chrome carts, but do we have enough charging ability in the classroom?
So,
Yeah, I think what I see happening is, Gene mentioned the district device fund. So when we started the district device fund, Dr. Phillips, was that around 2015, 2016? We got money as principals to spend to buy devices just exclusively for technology. At that point, we spent almost every penny of it trying to acquire Chromebook carts or laptop carts or something like that. We were trying to rush to catch up to be more mobile. What we're hoping will happen now, by taking the student and teacher devices off the table, it allows principals to invest that money, in like panels with an Apple TV or something like that connects more. But also, I think at some point, it may not be year one, but I think you'd see them start to look more at the charging stations. Or in a high school, you could have 2 or 3 charging stations in the cafeteria. The kids could, just like if you went to Starbucks or something, and library would probably have one. And it's going to be, it's going to be like everything else. There'll be a certain amount of training at the start with kids to learn the importance of charging their devices. And I think sometimes as adults we struggle with the same thing, but I think it's one of those things where I think kids will pick it up pretty quickly, and then if not, we'll have the Chromebooks or other devices for them to use if it's not charged.
And I think too, you kind of have to go back to the history of how we are, kind of to this point. Not only with technology in the district device fund, but it was the same situation with fundraising all across the system for basic supplies of office, copier, paper, those kind of things. You guys may not remember those days, but I do. And when I came, we were giving $15 per student. Now we're giving 75, a little over 75. And of course, after multiple years of that refocused a lot of effort and energy from fundraising for basic things in the schools away from principals and teachers so they could focus on things that they needed to do. That doesn't mean that they're not fundraising. Those fundraising dollars are being spent on things that probably are to enhance or to do things that are above and beyond what we would normally do, right? Same thing with district device fund. We didn't have any money going to schools. We started implementing that, and we were able over years to build up, right? Now that we're making this investment across the district, you may want to look in the future, right, at how that district device fund is allocated and spent, right? Because you may want to say, okay, we're going to continue to give you a portion of that money, maybe not as much, but the district's going to restrict some in the future, because 3 years from now, 4 years from now, guess what's going to happen? Right? You're all going to be sitting here, probably, looking at replacement devices and a cost. Does that make sense? So you need to probably think through how we in the future, it doesn't mean it's this coming year, but how in the future are we going to look at the dollars we've been allocating in our general purpose budget for district device fund, and do we want to continue to do that at 100%, or now that it's going to be spent predominantly for accessories and other things in the classroom, do we take some of that those dollars restricted every year? That way the district has a pool of money ready to spend in 3 years when these devices roll off.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, this kind of piggybacks on the question I asked earlier about the devices that are already in the schools. Will we be able to update those devices that are already in the building to have the same capability and functionality as the ones we're purchasing?
Yep. So yes, with a limit. It has to update to a certain iOS or operating system to be able to hold what's in those profiles.
Yep. And that was kind of the next question is you know, as I, before I transitioned to my new ServPro job, my old ServPro job,
Yes, sir.
I was training Salesforce,
Yes, sir.
and we have Salesforce Mobile that we were training on the road, and we often had owners show up that weren't technologically savvy, and they might have an iPad that was 5 or 6 years old that maybe they hadn't turned on. We won't talk about how many times they didn't even know their own password for their iPad. That's a totally different conversation. But they couldn't run the program because it was too old. It was outdated. Is there a I know we mentioned that the Apple Care, is there any type of device recycle plan built into that every 2 to 3 years, or once you pass a certain model number or iOS number or update that they would be replaced?
Is it? Let's speak to it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the options that we're looking at now. Is the good thing about iPads as opposed to a Chromebook at the end of its life is worth about $6. An iPad at the end of its life is worth somewhere around $100. So you've got more residual value for sustainability long term. There's a lot of things that, as Dr. Phillips mentioned, a lot of things we'll have to look at for down the road about the best way to rotate that out. But you have a lot more options with an iPad because they're still desirable devices at the end of that time, where Chromebook is pretty much, you know, Chromebooks have been great devices and they've served us well. But if we're wanting to go to the next level, the iPad, I mean, and I'm thankful that Apple has really jumped into the K-12 market, and because, I mean, basically the price point for an iPad with the trackpad and case is within $40 of a Chromebook right now. So it's then that's with 3 years of Apple Care. So that's it's a game changer for us.
I think what you'll see, to follow up on that, and I don't want to speak about what will occur down the road, but I think you will get a sizable amount of funds back once you trade these devices in. Other districts that I'm familiar with that have been doing this for 2 or 3 years that have now looking to replace their 3-year device so they can get a new device, you know, they're getting half of their, pretty close to half their costs back or something like that. So, you know, I don't know what the market will look like 3 years from now, but you're going to have some built-in value in these devices that you will get some funds back to help offset the cost that I was talking about earlier.
Well, and I know when we've gone to purchase new devices, you know, oftentimes Apple has, hey, we'll give you this much if it does this, or if there's a broken screen or whatever. And that's kind of the last question that I had is, do we or can we provide like specs to like a PTO or to our principals, that if they know they've got a PTO group that wants to, you know, maybe they want to go 1-to-1 in all their classrooms, to say, hey, this is, and I know we did that with some of our computers to try to say, instead of 70 different types of Chromebooks, we want 1 or 2. can we provide those specs to those schools and those principals to say, hey, this is what you need in order to get this? Because I could see some people go out and be like, well, these refurbished ones are a really good deal right now, but in a year, they're not going to be able to update to the version you need to run the programs that you want.
Mr. Daniels, we did that years ago. It was kind of a big struggle for us, and that's been, gosh, 8, 9 years ago, Chris. And we had that happening not only with computers, but we had it happening with printers and all types of things used in classrooms across the system. And I think that goes back to what I was mentioning, that we did not have really a district approach. So the schools were left to kind of do what they could do, right? But now that we're doing things more at the district in a systematic way, I think we've solved a lot of that. So most of what you're referencing, I think we crossed that bridge a long time ago. And so principals are good to ask IT, hey, I've got this much money to spend from a fundraiser. We want it spent for technology through PTO. And we help them buy those items. So it's configured the way we want it. It matches what we have. It's accessible to our system. You know, all those things that you're worried about.
Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Lacy?
I guess the lifespan is 3 years. Are we?
Well, I think that's what Apple Care covers it for 3 years. Is that right?
It's the Apple Care that you're purchasing.
So it's kind of like, you know, your warranty runs out on your car.
Well, I've heard like on our Google Chromebooks, they're not allowed to use them after 3 years. And they have to discard them, get rid of them.
No, they don't discard them, get rid of them. I think that there's some, I think there's probably, I'm going to let them answer this, but because they know more better than I do. But I think the issue with Apple Cares, you know, if you can trade this device in after 3 years and recoup a big portion of the cost and get a new one that's covered for 3 more years, that's probably what you want to do. You'll have to cross that bridge, but I would think that would be the mindset going on. Now, I'm going to let them answer the Google Chromebook, but I don't want to say something.
Yeah, as far as the Chromebooks goes, if they're not damaged, if they're functioning, they're turning on, we leave them in the buildings. Google, up until a point, Google will only support that device for so long. At that point, that device is no longer functional. Once Google stops support, it's a done deal. So we do have to pull in that. That varies depending on the model.
So it's not necessarily a time period, it's when it's kind of not supported.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think, Mr. Lacy, what we've seen this year for the first time is the state upgraded their testing security protocol, and it's starting to knock off our Chromebooks faster than it used to. So that 3 year, like what we're hearing now is that the security features on the Chromebook, it's hard for them to maintain that over 3 years. So it works fine in a classroom typing and looking stuff up on the internet, but in terms of connecting to TN Ready, and more importantly, the ACT goes all online this year. So this fall we'll give for the first time all of our high school students have to take the ACT online, and the ACT, AP, you know, College Board, they're going to have much stricter protocol even than we do.
Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, so if we are going to assign the Chromebook per student, will we though, like I was saying, you know, they come in the first day of school or registration, we give them their Chromebook, they get it assigned. Will we then also then take them back at the end of the year to do the updates and so forth, and then also to make sure that we get those back for transferring students and so forth?
That's a great question, and we discussed that this week, didn't we? So we're going to wait and make that call if we collect them at the end of the summer, or let the students keep them through the summer around Christmas. Looking at how many lost, stolen, broken devices do we have, and our feedback from our secondary principals is saying that, you know, I get Chromebooks, or I get iPad 17, and then organizing that in such a way of a high school of 1,700 students, and that Chromebook, that iPad comes back to me, it is a lift. And so what does that look like logistically on the school side, and talking with secondary principals on what that looks like versus this is your iPad for 9th grade, and then you're going to get an iPad for 10th grade as well. Might not be the exact same ones. We're still toying with that idea.
What about though if you've got an iPad for 8th grade, you're going to the high school?
My feel, Ms. Andrews,
stay
is
within.
I differ a little bit. Let me just weigh in here.
Yeah, sorry.
I think you almost have to take them up at the end of the year, because what we can do is you can wipe them, and then when the child puts their Apple ID back in the fall when they get one, it loads everything back up. You don't. It stays in their iCloud account. So I think it's probably easier. Like what I think we could look at is like, let's say a kid's going to boys state or girls state or governor's school or something like that, we could easily have a lending program where they could check it out and take it with them. But to run it to scale, I would feel safer having those devices back in the summer, and then we can check to see if they're not charging, if they're chipped, if there's something like that. We could, make AppleCare claims over the summer so that our fleet's back up to 100% when we get ready to start school.
I agree. I mean, I think too, we have students that move throughout the summer and so forth, just so too that we can account for them and that, they're not taking them and we're having to brick them and whatnot. Transferring from school to school, that's kind of the thought of, but if they've got it on their iCloud account, by the time they get to middle school, they can do lots of things. They can do lots and lots of things. I will also want to touch on just school security on devices. I can say if your student is logged in through their Sumner K-12 account, even on their personal at-home device, there are certain things they cannot do. Because I've had to message Mr. Brown and be like, why can I not do this for my own child? It's because it's locked down. And so I'm thankful for that, and I can speak to that as a parent that is very restrictive on what their children are allowed to access, that those filters that we have in place. So I would assume that, even with these, like, my daughter just turned 18 years old, so she just got this removed from her, but up until she turned 18, if she wanted to download an app that was not on there, it had to be requested. Are those types of parameters in place? I mean, I know you said that there would only be, kind of a selection or so that they could pull from, so they can't go in and add multiple games or different things. Will parents be able to track anything that they do on that, or that will be done I also know that the district tracks certain things and will address things that are inappropriate.
It'll have the same trackers that you see, like, for instance, like Ms. Brown and I get, you'll hear a little bit later, when people, like, I can always tell when summer reading and AP classes are due, because every use of certain words like gun or something like that, we get an alert.
Shakespeare's fun.
Yeah, Shakespeare triggers the filter like nothing else. It's really sensitive and it's very thorough, and it's and I can attest to the fact how well it blocks social media stuff. Like after Teacher of the Year banquet last week, I was planning on doing a Facebook Live, and time-wise, I was going to do it from Liberty Creek High School, and what I discerned is that they're not kidding when they say that it blocks Facebook Live at a school building. It doesn't matter if you have this device or a student device. It blocks Facebook Live if you're connected to the internet. So it's very good.
Yep, 100%. My daughter brought her personal Chromebook to school right after COVID and logged into the school network, and then brought it home and tried to log into Netflix like she normally would, and it was blocked. And so when she had the privilege of meeting Mr. Brown, I introduced her to him as, "This is Mr. Brown. He's the man that blocked Netflix." And so that was she was like, hi. I wasn't exactly sure how to split with that. So.
Yeah, but I think it's, Ms. Sanders, I think it's, on a serious note, I think that I'm really satisfied with the filters that we have, and not just the content filters, but checking, we've had some students that have expressed being in crisis, and we've been able to get them help very quickly. And, I feel in a way like we'll be more attuned to that now because it's going to be their device during the school year. And so if a student's in crisis and they put something in print on their device, we're going to be alerted very quickly.
Mr. Lacy?
What grade, I know 1-to-1 is kind of a good goal, but is there a certain grade level that you would not want 1-to-1? Like, say, would it ever be a good idea to go all the way to kindergarten 1-to-1? Is that normal, or I was just wondering what the standard is?
I think people think differently about it. Like, personally, I don't necessarily love 1-to-1 in elementary because I think kids need to be, I think 5, maybe by upper elementary, I think 1-to-1 is probably more appropriate, but I don't know that. I think what we see is that they're better used when there's 4, 5, 6 in a classroom where they can use them in stations, but it's not we always have a concern about a device becoming the primary means of instruction, and so that's a little stronger than a personal belief, but I think that most of us, I think Ms. Session, you can certainly chime in there.
I think if we're looking for highest levers, our secondary lanes are definitely where we should start, and then we can always look and reassess what we're doing in K2. We have so many instructional pieces in K2 that are tactile, that are require movement manipulation, that those are lost on the device. So balancing that with developmentally appropriate expectations for the K2, 3, 5 crowd versus what students are ready to take off and run with for secondary is always a fence to ride. Okay. All right, so I want to run through professional learning, and then I want to get to this demo because I think you guys are going to be real. Well, I'm excited. So this is the difference in this project that makes teachers really excited. Looking at ongoing support, with this project, we'll continue to work with this host of Apple support people. Our team for Sumner County is fantastic. We'll continue with Apple teacher certifications, so teachers can become certified in the iPad use, in a MacBook use, in all things Apple. There are certifications that they can complete online that are free to build their capacity in using the device. Further, we're going to encourage teachers and IT coaches to gain their learning coach certification through Apple. They follow the gym night coaching cycles where you have a clear picture of reality, you set goals, you work with the coach in achieving those goals. We're going to work with our leaders in the instructional technology coach team to become Apple Coach certified. We will continue to have, and we've had these since just before or just after COVID, instructional technology coaches in the buildings. Every building has one. Like high school has 2. Those are teachers that are education or technology inclined that we pour into to provide more training, and they provide additional training at their building. We will continue with that program into this school year as we train our teachers to implement and use these devices to truly unlock kids' geniuses and tap into their talents. And then finally, the biggest just win for me and for our teams. We are so excited to share this I can't wait to share this with teachers because it's going to be great. The Apple Professional Learning Annual Support. There will be an individual that works with Apple, that's employed by Apple, that reports to our school system every day for a calendar year to provide ongoing professional learning for the teachers, for leaders, and for students. So these individuals will this individual will not be working on the connectivity. Like, why is my device not working with the network? We have structures for that. We have support for that. How do I increase or further engage my students in the writing process using this tool? How does this tool impact my instruction will be the lift and the support that this individual provides for an entire calendar year as an expert from Apple. What's wildly exciting about this is this person will wear one hat. They will support Apple devices in our district and how we use those. There's not going to be taking on RTI or anything else. How do we use these devices in the classroom? That is really exciting for our teachers and for our principals to think that there will be someone in the district that will be able to come to their building that is already an Apple expert. There's no learning curve involved. So we're really excited about that. So looking at this project, thinking about unlocking kids' geniuses, tapping into their talents, adapting our practices, connecting thinkers and learners, how do we do that? We're addressing the needs of our infrastructure, we're providing the devices for our students, and the ongoing PL for both our leaders and our teachers to look at every angle of this project to be sure that it's best for our kids and for our teachers, thinking now and going forward. Okay? Now, in front of you, we're going to use Apple Classroom to demo this, and I want you guys to be able to get to school safety. These devices are the exact devices that students will get. I'm going to be the teacher. Okay, so you all have the device in front of you. I'm going to be the teacher here. So I can think through this one. And on my device, I can see what all of you are doing. And I can see where you are. I can see what you're on, what home screen you're on. And in my classroom, I want to go ahead. We're learning about, I'm a 4th grade teacher learning about, I'm a high school anatomy teacher. And I want to look at the heart and the systems of the body. So you guys are all coming into the classroom, you're all over the place you are going from this app to this app to this app. I open my Apple Classroom, I can see what you're doing. I'm gonna go ahead and push this to you all. You should go ahead and click where it says AR mode. So I've directed all of you to the app where we need to be to learn. And you should have an app that's, you click it AR mode. You need to move to find a flat surface. Make sure your keyboard's down so your camera's enabled. So your camera's open. Yep. Find a flat surface. You may need to stand up. Find a flat surface. Okay, so let's go. Keep turning. Okay, then click. Let's tap in place. Okay. So you can move around, you can see different angles of the skeleton, you can look at different systems and structures. So you can look at you can zoom in to see the lungs, you can see the heart, you can turn around, look at the different systems of the body. Okay? If you look in the upper, right-hand corner where it says heart, click where it says heart for us. Okay, we got it. When you see the heart along the top, it gives you some common ailments of the heart. If you click that, you can see what that looks like. See what it looks like to have, atrial fibrillation. You can also move your body around to see the different angles.
Mine don't look like that.
Doesn't? That's a good thing. I know. Yes. So go ahead. So as a teacher, I'm walking around helping students, and I've got this. You guys are all seem to be on task. And then there's one student off task. Uh-oh. Who's the off task student that got locked? All right, so Mr. Lancaster, turn your screen around, please. You can see that he's locked. So as a teacher, I can say, I was looking at your device and I saw that while we were supposed to be doing the heart, you were looking at the Statue of Liberty. And so I need to have a discussion with you. So the teachers are able to see exactly what the students are doing and say, let's talk about this, sir. All right, so that's cool for a teacher side, right? So we're going to move on to a different app. While you guys are looking at the heart, we're going to switch gears and look at the Statue of Liberty. So you guys should have another app opening up. Scroll down and click the second one. The second option where it says inside. Go back again. Okay.
It says how Liberty was made.
How Liberty was made. Click where it says view in AR. Same thing. Place her somewhere in the room on a flat surface.
I know, gracious.
And they should be able to see from all angles. Move around, in and out. They study this in Module 4 in 3rd grade. This is also, hits every social studies standard in high school. You can also look where it says there's layers at the bottom, where it says, which one would you say? X-ray?
X-ray or time machine?
Time machine or X-ray, you pick. And it shows you how it looked originally. And then it also gives you X-ray mode. It gives you like copper, gains of patina, tells you a little bit about it. And then you can also go to X-ray mode where you can see the inner structures of the Statue of Liberty. These are opportunities that our students aren't going to be able to experience. This isn't, even if you went to Ellis Island, this isn't something that you would see. But you're able to see the image there in your classroom, and not just see it, but then spin around. You can also see it in real size. So if you were standing at the base, to look up, what would that look like for your kids? How big is this structure?
I mean, this looks like the door.
All right. So, just wanted to give you a brief tiptoe into what these devices will provide for our students. I love seeing you guys with the devices of like, wait, this not yet. I think it'd be really cool to pull back the layers of, like in the dissection, the skin and then the muscles, the different skeletal systems, nervous systems, as you virtually dissect to be ready for what you're about to do in class. So these are free apps. This is anything that's going to cost us. This is free apps that would work outside of internet access for our students. And there are a host of these, not just the Heart and Statue of Liberty. Obviously, all the DC memorials are available on this type of approach. There's tons of opportunities for our kids to open up those experiences beyond a textbook or a classroom. So super excited about this, and we'll take any questions before quickly switching gears.
Miss Andrews.
Yeah, so I actually saw some of this actually a few years back at TSBA State Convention. It's where I learned about the, it's not Osmobots. They're the bigger ones. Spiros. And I actually bought my kids them for Christmas that year because it was so cool to see what they were doing. And one of the things that they had though was like a camera or like a microscope that you put on the camera. Is that something, like we talk about accessories and stuff like that. So I know, in high school we have the homage tables, but even looking at biology classes or looking at middle school science, though, I mean, again, this was probably 7 years ago I saw this and it still sits with me today, just how cool that was. And so obviously this would be something that would relate to that, or those things that we're also looking at, either across time or specific to those classes that could then be classroom sets.
Yeah, I think we're 2 years away from science textbook adoption or curriculum adoption, and where I see science moving, like the publishers are forming partnerships with the large science supply kits, like where you buy dissected frogs and all kinds of stuff, and like where I see it moving towards is not so much a textbook as it is you buy kits for the classroom so that science becomes a lot more experimental. And I think that, like this would play into that really well, because we're looking, especially like in middle school science, how do you upgrade the lab equipment across the board? Well, I mean, if we can do, obviously nothing will replace a microscope, but if we can use some things like this to make it much more scalable and able to do at home and things like that, then that's a powerful tool to link in with where we're moving, I think. And I think that science will be the first curriculum adoption that will be totally different than anything we've done in the past. I think we'll move away from print a lot.
Mr. Lancaster.
I guess one question, with the growing advent of Chat GPT and all that stuff, I don't exactly, just the AI stuff.
Yes, sir.
I see this as potentially helping with that, because we can force our teachers to require, like, hey, you got to turn your paper in. Will a teacher be able to see like what you saw with Apple Classroom? I know that would be in the classroom, but like if you assigned a project or a paper or whatever, would you be able to see like that, how that was produced or whatever? Or?
So I think you're saying, will I be able to know if you've used ChatGPT at home based on Apple Classroom? It's on proximity. So it's by Bluetooth connectivity, so you have to be close to me to be able to connect to my Apple Classroom. So I would not be able to see how a student created their paper at home. There are technologies that are right on the heels of AI to be able to run through, like you would Turnitin or other platforms to check for plagiarism that are right on the tails of AI. But it's definitely something that we are leaning into and embracing, knowing that that's the calculator.
But if you required them, if they had these devices one-to-one and they had to turn it in on this device, and we filter stuff, so you would probably, I mean, I would assume we would not let.
Like, would ChatGPT even be an
Yeah.
availability to them? That's a conversation we can definitely have. We have not blocked it. There's a lot of possibilities on mindsets are split on with how to use something like AI, and so it's a conversation we can definitely have. But
Well, I
there's
know
opportunities
there's
with it.
good and bad.
Absolutely,
I just,
you're right. Yes,
you
sir.
know,
Yes,
It's kind of like YouTube.
Right. Yes, sir.
The other thing, are we looking? We are looking at purchasing the devices and not. Is there a lease? I mean, I don't know how
Purchase.
that's going to work. Okay, that was the other thing.
Yes, sir. Purchased. Yes, sir.
Mr. Graham.
Are these compatible with other Bluetooth devices like headphones or a larger keyboard?
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're not blocked. Okay.
No. So if you needed for accessibility purposes, you needed a larger keyboard for a student, that's a possibility.
Okay.
Headphones are also a possibility. Yes, sir.
What?
You know, I just wonder, I sit here and I think about every student in each of our schools, and I just wonder, and I don't, it's probably not, but is there that one student that just can't get the operation of this thing? Just can't, has tried and tried and cried over it and just cannot get it like I would be. I amazed myself a few minutes ago. I actually did get to see the heart, but anyway. And if we do have that one student, what are our plans to educate that child, even though it's dragging a ball and chain because of its inability to grasp this? What are our plans to teach that child and to teach that child
Yeah.
as much as the next child that does know how to work this, to keep up the pace?
Yeah, I think it's a tool, Mr. Wise. So it's not the only tool in our arsenal. We still have pencil and paper. I think that the thing is like, how do we coach and train that student? It may not be their favorite way to learn, but the way things are moving, they're going to have some level of comfort with it, because the ACT, you know, I suspect that before long, all, like, if you're taking a safety test, well, they already are, safety tests for a CTE career path are all online. But I think, you know, to me, it's like, where do we start and where do we end and how do we move? I mean, the thing is, like, everything we do on an iPad, we can do on pencil and paper as well, and I think that's important.
Okay, and I want to share something real personal to me, and that probably is a big reason that I think like I do. When I was in the 7th grade, and I don't know, maybe Doc may have heard the story. I'm not sure. You have to be old enough to remember what the Huntley-Brinkley report was, and probably I'm the only one in the room that Danny Hurst may remember what the Huntley-Brinkley report was. But when I was in the 7th grade, our history teacher gave us an assignment for that night. Watch the Huntley-Brinkley report. We leave class and I'm walking down the hall with a friend of mine named Harold, and I said, "Hey Shelton, what's the Huntley-Brinkley report?" I didn't have a TV. I had no clue what the Huntley-Brinkley report, it's a news report back in the day. Now y'all have learned something. So I have a heart for those who may not be able to. You know what I'm saying? So, but they are just as important
Absolutely.
as Mr. Graham, who can grasp it easily. I watched him be pretty good at it. So I want to know, I want to be sure, I want to feel comfortable that I am going to be educated at the same speed and at the same level that Mr. Graham is being educated. Okay?
Yeah.
I want to have that comfort.
And I think, Mr. Rogers, yeah, we can absolutely do that. And the flip side of your example is the reason I'm so excited, and I think, you know, Ms. Hessen was when we finally reached the finish line on it, is that there are a large number of kids that for the past 10, 15 years, you know, like my house was rich with devices because I've always been a computer nerd, you know, all the way back to the Commodore 64. I've always had devices in my house, but a lot of kids went home with no devices, and for every kid to be able to go home with the same device to level that playing field, and then to add the accessibility tools that an Apple device has, it really, you know, but I think that it's point well taken that we need to be prepared to help all kids regardless of how they learn best.
Real quick, will most of our textbooks be able to be like that we're buying? Will they be like on here? Like I know a lot of we don't have textbooks that go home. We have like a certain book that goes. But will our textbooks have apps that will just be able to?
Most do. There's varying. Our textbooks that are older have less capacity, and they're like, you know, glorified PDFs. The newer stuff, like, you know, our math curriculum will have a whole lot more stuff that's accessible at home. And with each generation, as we move down, there'll be more of that. But it'll be a little bit of a like for instance, the science, because, you know, we're on the state changed the adoption cycle, so it moved science to 8 years. So what we have right now for science has some online and iPad functionality, but it's at 6, 7, 8 years old, and they don't update those older ones. They're getting ready for the next round. So it'll be a little variation, but there'll be something pretty much for all of them.
Question 10. All right, looks like we're done.
Thank you.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is very exciting.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
Long time coming for the district, and a lot of work over the past 7, 8 years to get to this point. So proud of Gene and the Apple team, Chris, Scott, and everybody for getting us to this point. It's going to be a big game changer for all of our middle school, high school students.
Having taught in this district for 15 years and fundraising for paper and for light bulbs for my overhead projector, to stand in front of you all and say we're ready to go 1-to-1 for 612 speaks to the planning that's happened before I stood here. And I'm proud to be a part of that, and proud of the growth that our district has had, both as a parent, as a teacher, and now as a district employee. So it's not lost on me the magnitude of this project. So thank you.
Is you first or Mr. Wise first?
She ladies first.
Ms. Andrews.
Last question is, with these devices and purchasing and so forth, when do we expect to have them? Are we expecting to have them August 1st for the first day of school?
I mean, Brittany promised them next week, so no.
You're like, you're running.
She is a miracle worker, but our goal is to have high school distributed to students by, what was it, the third week of August?
That's correct.
We'd like to get things settled. You know, there's a lot of movement that first week or two of school, get things kind of settled in, and then probably for middle school, somewhere, you know, like late September, early October. We have to push high school first because they'll have to take an online ACT in September. We don't have the official dates yet, but September, October, and we'd like to have them have the devices, but also have a couple months to, and with high schools having an abbreviated, you know, being on block, having a 1 semester, you know, full course, we'd like to get them in high school first and then roll to middle school a little bit later. Learn a little bit from the first rollout and make it smoother.
Teachers will be before high school students.
Mr. Wise.
Yeah, I just kind of want to go back in history again, not that far back, but I want to ask Dr. Phillips, when you first got here 12 years ago and you looked at our budget, how much was the system spending for technology in our schools?
It's a great story. I couldn't find it.
I guess that means none.
I think we were spending $20,000 a year on technology, but one of the things I was going to tell you from a historical perspective, you know, without being too nostalgic, I couldn't send an email to the staff in this school district when I got here.
And how much are we spending?
We didn't have email. You couldn't send an email. Like I would have had to go to Indian Lake and send it through a Yahoo account. But you couldn't send one. So we've come a long, long way.
And what are we spending now?
Oh gosh. I mean, we've spent, since the beginning of the pandemic, probably not counting this, 15 million, somewhere in there.
All over it, yes, yes, sir.
15, 16 million since pandemic, and then, we've been building all along.
Yeah.
But certainly ramped up, and then that doesn't include the cost of these devices that'll be here. So part of this is being paid out of ESSER, which was part of our original plan to do that, and then part of it will be in the budget that I present next week.
Thank you.
Mr. Lancaster.
Do we need to update anything in our policy for device going home to people, like the security, like what happens if you lose it, what happens if you break it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we've actually been working with an Apple project manager, which brings, they do this all over the country. So they've already shared with us documents and proposed policies from all over the country. So we'll be able to share those, obviously well before we roll them out to, we'll have to think of that before we get close, because a lot of this we'd want to put on Skyward for new student registration.
Our current policy outlines acceptable use. It does not go through the details of something like this with taking them home. We haven't done it before. We have drafted a very detailed acceptable use agreement. It's not a policy, and we're going to get feedback on that from principals to see what that looks like.
All right. We're going to take about a 5-minute recess. We'll be coming back in executive session, closed session. If you are not a board member or a presenting staff member, we ask you to leave at this time. Thank you.